Greetings, children of the screen, your friendly neighborhood nerd scum here once again, coming at you with another Real Thoughts video. So this is the videos that are just, I have a few more things to say, then we'll fit into a quick thoughts video, so it's a little bit longer, and today we're going to be taking a look at Doomsday Clock number 6. Written by Jeff Johns, illustrated by Gary Frank, Brad Anderson on colors, and Rob Lee on letters. With cover art by Gary Frank and Brad Anderson. Right on, guys, so just a reminder, on the Quick Thoughts video, I give a very brief summation of the story, and I try to leave out some big spoilers, or at least enough that when you go out and pick up the book, you still have enough to explore and discover for yourself. However, on these videos, I tend to go a little bit more in-depth. There are no spoilers left unturned, so if you want to go check out the book first, definitely go pick up a copy, and then come back and check this video out. So, with that little warning out of the way, without any further ado, we're going to go ahead and dive into this thing. So, this issue begins to play with time a little bit more than some of the previous ones have. A lot of the previous ones have talked about it narratively, but they haven't been doing the kind of jumping back and forth, everything is happening now, Watchmen style thing that we're so accustomed to from the Watchmen book, as much as they are in this issue, which is one of the reasons why it's not going to be a quick thoughts video, because with all the jumping back and forth into timelines and different dimensions, it's really hard to keep track of it until just like a narrative version of it that's very condensed. So instead, we're going to kind of maybe jump around a little bit, and I'm just gonna kind of talk about it. So we open this issue off with seeing Marionette as a little girl, and seeing her father, who was an immigrant who made dolls like marionette puppets, and he is being basically accosted by the police over a protection racket. And we see the young Marionette hiding underneath his desk, crying as she looks at a marionette doll that looks exactly like the alter ego that she will eventually take on. And then from that, we transition from her face into the face of the grown Marionette wearing the makeup, and we are back in the DC universe where the Doomsday Clock story is happening, where if you remember in the previous issue, at the end of that, Joker had basically captured Mime and Marionette, and they had also managed to get Batman. So at this point, Joker is leading Mime and Marionette down into the sewers with Batman, going to some undisclosed location. And as they go, they bump into some guys from Mr. Freeze's gang, who were scared shitless by the Joker. And basically, they're just like, oh, dude, what are we gonna do? It's the Joker! It's like, don't worry, play cool. They're like, hey, Mr. Joker, how's it going? He's like, what are you boys doing here? And, you know, they're like, oh, well, like, we got held up by the riots, and we were supposed to meet up with, because remember the riots from previously? I know it was like 2 months ago, but there were riots also in the previous issue. Yeah, so, anyway, he's like, yeah, they got held up in the riots, and then they kind of got lost down there, and they missed meeting up with Mr. Freeze, who's going to this big bad guy convention that they're having down to discuss what's happening and how to deal with the whole, like, meta-human crisis that's happening up on the streets above, and all the civil unrest, and, like, how the bad guys are going to both cope with it, find shelter, as well as hopefully take advantage of it. So anyway, these guys run into Joker, and Joker's like, well, this seems like a prime opportunity for you. How would you like to join my gang? And they're like, oh, dude, these parkas are so fucking hot. And, like, one of the dudes is like, are you crazy? He's the fucking Joker. He's definitely gonna kill one of us. And they're like, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. So, like, they agree, and then, like, Joker brings out this, like, methed out looking dude who just, like, has a tattoo gun and starts, like, tattooing smiles on their faces and crap. So in the process of this, Marionette, like, apologizes to Joker again, kind of half-heartedly, but does it. And Joker's like, apology accepted, you get to join the gang too, and, like, gets Crackhead Dude to start trying to tattoo them, and they just totally flip shit and kill pretty much all of Joker's dudes, and, like, freaking Mime is beating the crap out of the last one, and Joker's like, get away from him, and shoots, and, like, misses Mime completely and plants one right inside his own dude's head, and then just starts laughing hysterically as he does, and, like, it's just like, you know what, you're right, I was just joking, all's forgiven, you kids come with me, I like you. So then we cut back to the young Marionette back in the past, and we find that she's a pretty lonely kid, that pretty much she just has her dad, and he's an immigrant, and he's very isolated, and because of kind of the racketeering scheme, or the protection racket that's going on, like, he doesn't have a very expansive life. He has very limited options. But she sees that across the way at this glass shop that, like, a new family just opened it, and they've got a little boy. So her dad encourages her to go say hi, and she does, and, like, but instead of just going to say hi, she, like, takes her little Marionette that looks like who she will become, that her father has given her, and, like, does a little dance in the window and, like, waves at the kid and gets him to come over there. So the kid kind of like comes over and she takes him by the arm. She's like, hey, what's up? And he doesn't say anything. She's like, don't you talk, man? She's like, hey, this is my dad's store. Let me show you around. And so like she brings him inside, and you can tell that he's just kind of in wonder, in awe. And you also kind of get the sense that, again, he's also kind of a lonely kid, you know? He doesn't really have any friends, he's new to the area, and you can tell that there's also something deeper that's a little off with him, or something that's troubling him, or you can tell there's something not right with the boy. The boy ain't right. So the next time we see Marionette, she's walking down the street playing with her namesake, and we see these really horrible, bratty bully kids who start making fun of her because her dad's a foreigner, and because her dad, like, plays with toys and makes dolls, so he must be a pedophile, and they start calling her a stupid slut, and someone tries to take the Marionette, and she just, like, jumps on him, and then these kids just start beating the crap out of her, and, like, they hold her down, calling her horribly despicable things, and talking about, like, pretty much one of them's pulling out a knife so they can start cutting her hair off, when all of a sudden, out of nowhere, boom, a freaking glass bottle hits one of these kids right in the side of the head and splits his head the fuck open. Everybody turns, and it's the young version of Mime who's standing there with another bottle in his hand ready to go, and someone's like, hey, what, are you crazy? And he just, like, smacks another one with one and jumps on him. And then the little girl who, like, started the whole thing, like, the whole ringleader of it, she tries to run off with Marionette's namesake, and Marionette is like, oh, hell no, bitch, and she tackles that hoe and gives her a couple of good shots to the face, and then just looks at Mime and is like, hey, you got any more bottles? And it's like a really great cementing of the beginnings of their relationship, and as we will see further, like the things that they went through, it really does help sell the idea that they are just solid, like they are inseparable. Even when they were in prison, there was a part of them that was always together, and it does create a very beautifully twisted love story. So then back in present day Gotham, the Joker, Batman, Marionette, and Mime, along with Mr. Freeze's newly tattooed Joker henchman, show up at this big meeting that is being overseen by Riddler, who immediately is just like, oh god, not Joker. No, alright, who are you parading around as Batman this time? And Joker's like, what do you mean? And he's like, come on, we've done this before. We all know that, like, you've had several different times. There was that whole thing with Dick Grayson, and, like, no, plenty of times, like, who is it under the mask? And Joker's, like, truly offended, but just kind of, there are other things happening, as, like, all of a sudden, like, fights start breaking out amongst all of the villains, because they feel that, like, one of them is, like, an undercover agent working for the government, who's, like, trying to figure out what they're doing and trying to get a hold on any of the villains who have metahuman powers. And specifically, this character named Typhoon is singled out. And then just things are really heating up, and Penguin starts to attack Typhoon. Typhoon blows him across the room, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, boom! A gunshot blast. Goes right through the head of a frickin' member of the Court of Owls. And then, boom, another one. Typhoon is down. Turns out it is the frickin' comedian who has tracked Marionette and Mime here, and he just starts unloading, dude. Like, Mr. Freeze's dome gets busted open by a bullet. Frickin' Riddler takes one, like, right through the knee. It looks brutal. And with that, like, Marionette and Mime kind of, like, just bolt for it. While at the same time, like, Mime keeps trying to, like, jump in the way of the comedian, like, cause a distraction so that Marionette can get away, and she's like, hey, stop that shit, let's go! And meanwhile, the whole place is just fucking exploding as the Joker's sitting there cackling hysterically, just like, oh, what a perfect day, even better than I thought it would turn out to be. Like, what the hell? It's great. So then we're back to young Marionette, as we see that at a certain point her father felt like he was setting a bad example for his daughter, and like the guilt of what he was doing, the morality of it was really weighing on him, and he tried to stop, at which point the cops just beat him mercilessly, as well as his child, and basically told Home Dude that, like, if he didn't comply, that they were going to take his daughter to see the big man, the guy in charge, which definitely, within the way of the framing and the way it's spoken, has some very not nice connotations, if you know what I mean. So anyway, he agrees, and, like, all is said and done, and they embrace, but then later on, after hanging out with Mime, the little girl comes back home, and, like, she's talking with Mime, about, like, what happened to his mother, because it turns out that his mother had an accident, because she wouldn't cooperate with the police, where she fell down a fire escape, or was thrown down a fire escape, more likely. And so, I'm not really sure if she, from what I understand, from the way it's indicated here, like, she's dead. And they're talking about that, and as they're talking, they walk into the shop, and she finds her father hung, with a suicide note that says, take everything in the drawer and just run. I'm sorry I couldn't give you anything more than my life. And it's pretty fucking heartbreaking. And right about that time, the goddamn cops show up. And are like, what the fuck is this? And like, little Marionette loses her shit. Just like we saw happen earlier. Just like, it's like a trigger. That she's fine one moment and like nice and cordial. Or in this case, just in shock. And then all of a sudden, and she just grabs a pair of scissors and frickin' jams it deep inside one of these cops' necks. Like, jumps up and just plants it in there. The other cop just like, what the hell? And grabs her, is looking at his partner who is dying, and just freaking the fuck out. And he pulls out his gun, and like, literally is like, I'm gonna kill you, you little bitch. And about that time, Mime jumps up and frickin' bites him on the hand, which distracts him. He smacks Mime and like starts to go to shoot him. And about that time, we see the young little Marionette jumping through the air with her signature marionette string, and just right around the throat, and he is done. And then of course they bolt, and we get this nice little kind of a montage of them like sleeping on the streets and growing up together, and like starting to wear the Mime and Marionette makeup to perform and make a little money. And then we see like street gangs hassling them and them defending themselves, and it's this really good progression that goes through time, just giving us a whole kind of like summary of their backstory. We even get to see kind of, we've already seen them getting arrested, but there's kind of a panel that mirrors that, and then we also get to see her in prison giving birth to her child, and the child getting taken away, and Mime freaking out because he can't be there. And then we start transitioning as these panels stop showing us the past, and they start cutting from the past to the present. As like the child is introduced, we then start seeing in the present Mime and Marionette wherever they've escaped to having sex. And then like, as we go even further, all of a sudden there's a noise, and the frickin' comedian's there. So the comedian starts giving like his big badass speech as he walks forward to kill them, and in mid he starts just like and then we see Joker behind him with the frickin' hand buzzer, just like, and he's just like, you know what? I like you too. You know? You make me laugh. At which point Marionette just kind of looks at the comedian on the floor, and she's like, you know what? I bet this asshole knows where Dr. Manhattan is. To which the Joker's like, Dr. Manhattan? Who's that? I could use a dentist. It hurts when I smile. And all that kind of stuff. And then we get this, you know, as they've been doing, we get a nice little quote to end everything off as the Joker reaches down and takes the comedian's Watchman badge and puts it on his own lapel. And then it says, to truly laugh, you must be able to take your pain and play with it. Charlie Chaplin. And yeah, that's the end of the main book. And in the back, we get a dossier, a government dossier on Typhoon. The guy who got shot in the head by a comedian, turns out he was the mole working for the government. And it gives us his history, which is really messed up and sad, and even gets like one of the guys who worked with him, because basically it wasn't enough for, it's not like he went undercover for this one mission. Like, his whole career as a hero, people thought of him as a villain. That was his cover, kind of like a Green Hornet type thing. And so, like, he lost his family, like, his kids won't talk to him, he has no connection with them whatsoever, and then he's eventually killed in the line of duty, and, like, one of the guys who worked with him is coming forward and being like, hey, we need to make a public announcement, give him a public funeral, like, state that he was with us, like, let his memory be honored. And the government's like, no, this is too important, like, there's too much at stake, like, we can't do that, but, you know, like, we'll go ahead and honor the financial benefits to his family. Which I guess that's something, but but anyway, so yeah, and then there's a couple of other little things where they mention the Creeper and a couple of other characters. Definitely, when you pick these up, always read the stuff in the back. Always do it. It'll always, even if it's not something that directly links to the plot that you've been reading in this issue, it is always something that helps you kind of fill in the world. They've done a pretty good job of kind of mirroring that aspect of Watchmen without going overboard with it. Like, they could have easily given us, like, you know, 5 to 10 pages at the back of every issue that's just basically like, oh yeah, this is the novel that, you know, frickin' Night Owl 2 wrote eventually, or something like that. This is a nice kind of middle ground. Like, it's its own thing, but it's definitely reminiscent of those aspects of the Watchmen. So again, guys, overall, I really enjoyed this book, and I've enjoyed all the issues that have come out. I think that's pretty much like the genuine, like, consensus out there is that, like, it's not a bad book. But the delays have been killing it, man. There's not any hype for it anymore. People are still reading it, and I think people are still enjoying it, but they're not excited by it anymore. And they're definitely not, like, getting out there and being like, oh, Doomsday Clock, holy crap, man! Like, you've definitely lost all that momentum. And I think that, like, right now, that's hurting the perception of the story. Also, again, that thing of, like, there was originally a very clear timetable in which this was supposed to be happening, and because of the delays and stuff like that, that has changed, and everybody has kind of been wondering and worrying if that means that they're kind of trying to change everything that's going on in the DC universe so that, like, the timelines will eventually match up, or if they're pushing this story into its own little mini-universe, but they keep referencing things happening in the main continuity of DC right now, so seemingly it's in continuity, and seemingly there is a firm timetable. But because of the delays, and because we're getting the information in, like, such small doses with each issue, it's really hard to tell, and that's really been discouraging a lot of people. Like, but I do have to say that, like, at my local comic shop, we're still selling just as many issues as we had sold previously. People just aren't as outwardly excited about it. I think that if we can get this thing back on a regular schedule, which is what I'm hoping Jeff Johns is trying to do, that will help out a lot. I know it'll definitely help me, because again, every time I go back and read through these again to get to where I'm at, I'm like, this is a really solid book. Like, if this were all coming out month to month to month the way it was supposed to be coming out, like, I still think that people would be really enjoying this, and I think people would still be really excited about it. But then again, it would pretty much be over, or at least damn near close by now. So I would normally go through and talk about the writing or talk about the artwork, and in truth, there's not a whole lot to talk about, because in every video I've done for Doomsday Clock, I'm kind of saying the same things. It's the same creative team, they're handling each issue with the same kind of artistry and integrity, and they're pretty solid books, guys. So there's not a whole lot to say in that respect, but one of the things I will say is that in this particular issue, I found the backstory of Mime and Marionette worked a lot more for me than kind of some of the other backstories, like, for example, the backstory of Rorschach 2. You know what I mean? I felt that, like, the way they depicted those characters definitely got me invested in them. Like, they showed us that they're crazy, they showed us that they're psycho, but through this story, you definitely begin to empathize with them a little bit more, and you definitely start to care about them a little bit more. And you, even despite how horrible they are, kind of hope that things work out for them. And I think that that is masterfully done, and that, like, these two characters are definitely the standout characters out of this book. So I'm not going to go deep into the writing or deep into the artwork, but I did want to point out that the Marionette Mime stuff is very, very solid in this book, and it made me respect and love them a lot more than just being kind of rip-offs or kind of alternate versions of Punch and Judy. This definitely makes them feel like more of their own characters, even though a lot of it is still based on archetypal similarities between Punch and Judy. It's just a great solidification of those characters and giving you kind of the final piece that you need to be like, okay, I now completely get these people as a whole. I understand them, I understand the bond between them, and I understand why they're important to this story. Of course, we still don't know who their child's going to turn out to be. A lot of people are suspecting it's the Joker, which is highly probable, but I think it's a little too obvious. And I think that if that's what it was, and it was that obvious, we would have gotten to there before now, before issue 6. Then again, with the pacing on this book and everything that we just talked about with the, release date, who knows? In general, guys, I really enjoyed this book this week. Yet again, I've enjoyed all the issues. I still highly recommend it, and this week this book's going to be getting a 4.5 out of 5 GGs and a definite recommend. But that's just what I thought, guys. Did y'all check out this issue this week? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you like this video, please leave a like and share it with some friends. That's more important now than ever with everything YouTube's been changing up on small YouTubers like myself. Also, if you're not subscribed, make sure to subscribe and hit that little bell so you can get updates on all the dope content I'll have coming out in the future. And furthermore, guys, if you'd like to follow me on Instagram or Twitter, I will have the links for that in the description below. Thank you very much, children of the screen. I hope you all have a good one. Nerd Scum, out.